Namaste and welcome to Insight UK's podcast series on Hindu Persecution Awareness Month. So Insight UK, as you already probably know, is a social movement dedicated to raising awareness, advocating and campaigning for courses against anti-Hindu and anti-India hate propaganda on issues that would concern and impact the British Hindu and British Indian community here in the United Kingdom. And this month, the month of October, Insight UK, we are honoring this month, and we'd like to highlight it to bring to our audience's attention and focus on the Hindu persecution across the globe. So we are, as a part of this campaign, we are recording several podcasts and inviting several guests to speak to us about their experience and connection with the persecution of Hindus across the globe. So today, my guest is Professor Sajjad Raja. He's originally from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, from a district called Mirpur, and he's currently a United Kingdom British citizen. Unfortunately, he has had to live in exile for a while now because he has life threats from Pakistan and ISI, and has to live under police protection in the UK. Sajjad Raja is also a political worker and a human rights defender. He is the chairman of the National Equality Party, and this is a POJK and Great Britain-based political party, but has membership in all the divided parts of Jammu and Kashmir and Aksai Tibet, and is the only political party in POJK and Great Britain which owns the Jammu and Kashmir Accession Treaty of the 26th October 1947. Welcome, Sajjad.
Thank you, Ashnaji.
No problem. So we'll just move on to the questions, if that's okay. So can you talk a little bit about your understanding of the Mirpur Hindu Massacre? Because from our conversation earlier, like you said, not many people are aware of it, and this happened during the Pakistan invasion of the Jammu and Kashmir in 1947. Can you maybe give us a brief, timeline, while also sharing what you know about that massacre?
Mainly, it's called Mirpur Massacre because in our part of Jammu and Kashmir, which we call POJK, which is under Pakistani occupation since 1947, there were many massacres, but the biggest of all of them was Mirpur Massacre, in which about over 20,000 people were killed in a span of less than a month. So it is basically it began on 25th of November 1947, and then it ended with United Nations intervention in March 1948. But the main like deaths and abductions and then persecution took place during first couple of weeks, and then but it continued till March 1948. So about overall it's about 5 months period in which just from Mirpur, in this single episode, over 20,000 Hindus, and mainly Hindus and some Sikhs as well, non-Muslims, were killed. Their women were abducted. In fact, 5,000 women were abducted. They were sold in Pakistani markets in Rawalpindi, Peshawar, and then taken to Afghanistan as well. It's a black spot on our history, and we really get upset when we think about it. And it was mainly planned by Pakistani authorities, Pakistan Army and Pakistani intelligence agencies. But unfortunately, our people were also used in this massacre. And as you know, it was basically, uh, those days, 1947, the religious hatred was created by British government, and they wanted to leave India uh, as much divided as possible, and for their own interests. And they created this religious hatred, in which almost 1 million people died, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, from all religions and all sects. And this massacre was, in those terms, a part of all that bigger picture. But it's very disturbing, the stories, which we have heard from our elders, and which are told to us, which are mostly unwritten. But now there are quite a few books as well. There is some literature available, and people have written their memories, and they have written about whatever happened in 1947, particularly in Mirpur and POJK. So it's getting documented now as well. But main thing is, still, I think it's hidden from general public. So yeah, as I told you, it began in November 1947 and ended in March 1948.
Thank you, Sajjad. So, I just want to pick on something that you just mentioned. So for a long time, we were hearing that it was tribal leaders who attacked Jammu and Kashmir. But now, as you rightly said, in fact, the Pakistani authorities, the army, had a role in it, and in fact that they were leading it. And how was that hidden for so long? Why didn't the truth come out earlier? What do you think happened there?
I think it's mainly the British government, because Great Britain, excuse me, Great Britain didn't give independence to India. They created two dominions, and then they created disputes between them, and they had their own plans and designs, and they controlled, even till mid 50s. They controlled almost the whole state machineries in both India and Pakistan. So they kept they took away those files, like those secret files and documents which were there, and which revealed, the which had the facts and figures about the whole plan and everything. So that was one factor. Then the other factor is Pakistani and Indian establishments, unfortunately. Particularly, Pakistan has always been, a puppet of British government, but unfortunately, most of the Indian governments have also been siding with British plans, and they have been directly or directly, they carried forward the plan which was left behind by British establishment. So that was another reason. And then, like this, basically, people, those people who were involved in those activities, or who had awareness, they were bribed, probably, or whatever way, they were kept silent. But people wrote books, and those books were not readily available, and people, like general public, didn't know about those books. uh, as you know, in subcontinent, libraries and education system and information, availability of information is that not that common thing, and it's out of reach of the common man. And in last 10 12 years, particularly, this social media has contributed a lot, and this social media has uh, exposed everything, and it has brought to general public's notice, and now everything is being understood by general public, that whatever happened in 1947. uh, Pakistan was created on 14th of August 1947, and on 20th of August they made a plan which was called Operation Gulmarg. Now it is well documented now, and there are books available on this. Christopher Snedden has written a couple of books, and then Pakistani general who was in charge of this Operation Gulmarg. He was colonel then, but later on he was promoted to general. Akbar Ali Khan. He has written his book Invaders in Kashmir, and there are quite a few books, like Major Brown's book as well. It has come out as well, and there are some other books too. So Pakistan basically made a plan to invade Kashmir, and in fact, Qaid-e-Azam, like Pakistani leader who is known as Qaid-e-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jannah. Muhammad Ali Jannah had given orders for to his army to invade, to enter into Jammu and Kashmir, but this was stopped by the officer, general commanding officer of British forces, because it was still, on both sides, the army chiefs were British generals, and then the commanding officer, joint command officer, something it was called. He was a British general as well, who looked after and coordinated both, division of armies between Pakistan and India and all those affairs. So he didn't agree, and he forced Muhammad Ali Jinnah to withdraw his orders. So then Pakistan hatched a conspiracy. They hired people from different Pakistani areas, and then they recruited agents from Jammu and Kashmir, and it took about 2 months, and then in October they got everything ready in those 2 months, in September and October, and then in October, 22nd of October, they sent their army disguised in tribals. Actually, this was a militia, basically. This was tribal militia. It was not like, it was paramilitary force. Excuse me. It wasn't just, like common people. They were not common people. They were members of militia, and it was directly led and commanded by Pakistan Army officers. They entered Jammu and Kashmir, 10,000 of them from Muzaffarabad, and 10,000 from Bhimber and Mirpur sector. And they occupied within a few days almost 35% of Jammu and Kashmir. So it was not, now it is well known and well established fact that it was not tribal invasion, or it was not some public intervention into Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistani public or Pakistani masses. It was in fact Pakistan armies and Pakistani establishments well designed and well thought over plan, and they carried it out. They wanted to occupy whole Jammu and Kashmir. They wanted to occupy Jammu city, and they wanted to occupy Srinagar, but because of the resistance which Jammu and Kashmir forces gave and laid down their lives, particularly Army Chief of Jammu Kashmir Forces, Brigadier Rajendra Singh, and his men, the sacrifices they made, because of their sacrifices, their plans failed, and they couldn't occupy Srinagar and Jammu. But it was Pakistan army and Pakistani establishment who invaded and occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and uh, you know the the acts they did, the war crimes they indulged into, they carried out, are very barbaric, and uh, when we read about them, there are quite a few books. A gentleman called Balke Gupta is eyewitness. He has written a book. I don't know whether he's still alive or not, but since he moved to America in 1971, and he wrote a book. He was eyewitness of Mirpur massacre, and then there are other people who have written their notes and articles as well. So when we read about, particularly when we read Balke Gupta's book, it can be classified as one of the worst massacres of the human history, which was carried out by Pakistan army, unfortunately.
Thank you, Sajjad. I actually remember listening to a podcast of yours where you mentioned the Commander Rajendra Singh, and so anyways, like you just said, the brutalities faced by Sikhs, Hindus, in that invasion are unimaginable and just outright barbaric. Why do you think even the locals turned against their own Hindu friends and neighbors in when this was all going on?
It was not, like excuse me. Local common people were not involved. General public or masses, they were not involved in this massacre. Basically, it was Pakistan army, and Muslim soldiers of Jammu and Kashmir army. They deserted, and they joined hands with Pakistan, and then British army, regular serving people, they were sent on leave with their arms and ammunition. Excuse me. Sorry, I've got very bad cough, and
that's okay.
Yeah.
Are you okay to carry on?
And then it's all right. I can continue. So it was mainly, planned. The whole thing was planned by British establishment. They wanted to create, as I told you, hatred between Muslims and Hindus, and they wanted to, kill as many Muslims and Hindus as possible, to inflict pain and on people, and to prove that Hindus and Muslims can't live together and they are enemies, and so that this enmity continues. And then India and Pakistan, as they did later on, they fight each other, they carry on fighting each other, and obviously when they fight, when two countries fight, the first impact is that they can't allocate their resources for development, for infrastructure, for health, education, science, technology, for those things. And then they spend whatever they have got on arms and ammunitions. So the countries obviously remain underdeveloped, and then they become remote colonies of these Western powers. This was the whole design, basically. So those army officers or army personnel from POJK areas who were still serving in British army, they were given orders by their commanders, and they were sent home. And those people, those days, because there wasn't any general people in villages and towns, they didn't have any electronic media, or even they didn't have access to print media. So these people who were, like, who used to work in army and who were like serving in different government departments, they were very influential and they were considered very knowledgeable people. And like, they, whatever they used to tell people, and generally people believed that. That was that was a time, we are talking about 80 years ago. What sort of, you can imagine what sort of, even in today's villages, we don't have those sort of facilities, modern world facilities. So 80 years ago, there were no electricity, there were no televisions, there were even radios were, like, quite a few people had radios. And so these people were basically under the guidelines of the British intelligence services. These people were used, and then some agents were, created. Some agents were made within Jammu and Kashmir establishment, and they convinced the Muslims that Hindu, like Dogra government, particularly about our King Hari Singh, they rumors began, and that he is, like, he wants to kill all Muslims and blah blah blah, and he's Hindu, and Hindus and Muslims can't live together. That two nation theory, which was presented by British establishment. So this was all planned by British establishment, carried out by obviously on their orders. And then our people, our influential people, or our people who were in service, or who had recently retired from Second World War, they were used mainly. And then agents who obviously from within the Jammu and Kashmir establishment, particularly Jagirdars and Vaderas and those people, Rajputs, Muslim Rajputs, and they all were, like, they were bribed, and they were, given perks and money and everything, and their loyalties were bought. And so they all stood against Jammu and Kashmir government. And so these people basically carried out all these barbaric acts, and general public, wherever they could, they tried to save their fellow citizens, fellow non-Muslim citizens, Hindu citizens. But these people were so influential, and they had arms and everything, and they could do whatever they liked. And because half of the country, almost, Jammu and Kashmir was occupied by Pakistan, so there was Pakistan army everywhere and their intelligence services. So they were free to do whatever they wanted to do. So it was not general public; it was basically those British employees of British Army, and retired personnel, and then Muslim soldiers of Jammu and Kashmir army who deserted to Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it does help me get a much more clear picture of what happened in those days. And thank you for clarifying, who they were. And it wasn't actually the local people. And obviously, from what you're saying, it didn't really look like common people really had a lot of choice in that situation.
Yeah. Let me clarify another thing here. Local people, even today, like, for 76 years now, our people are being taught, we call it Pakistan Studies, Mutale Pakistan. So that is a special subject, which is pack of lies. And um, uh, it basically, it gives a sort of uh, Pakistan armies intellectual plan about how Pakistan army would carry on controlling Pakistan, and how division between Muslims and non-Muslims would be created, and how Muslims uh, would be taught fundamentalism, and they will be made, jihadis and extremists, and it's that sort of philosophy uh, which is uh, uh, which is basically taught and uh, fed through to the young brains right from childhood, from right from year one to onwards, nursery to college level. It is a compulsory subject. And even after, I mean, all these efforts, people in Jammu and Kashmir, they are still very much secular. They are still, they love, they remember their non-Muslim brothers and sisters who used to live in their villages, or uh, who were their friends, and they all still remember them. Though Pakistan has created many uh, fundamentalist organizations, jihadi organizations in Jammu and Kashmir. Um, and all these organizations have headquarters in Pakistan, back in Pakistan. And then these religious clerics, Molvis, and these preachers, they are being used for continuously. They have been used for 76 years. I mean, till they are still being used by Pakistan. They try to create hatred for non-Muslims among people, but still our people, they are quite secular, and they have not been, in fact, they have not been much mesmerized by these Pakistani teachings and Pakistani acts. And our people just want to live in peace and harmony, and we want reunification. Our people want reunification of Jammu and Kashmir. We want to live with our non-Muslims brothers and sisters. It's just Pakistani establishment and Pakistani intelligence agencies, uh, who, for the sake of, because Pakistani intelligence agencies, their sole objective is to to create and to continue the army's hegemony, like some way or the other. Because Pakistan is a military garrison. Pakistan army controls everything. So intelligence agencies only work how Pakistan army could be more stronger, and they could carry on controlling the country. And obviously they need a conflict, a live conflict, uh, for a strong army to have in a country. They need a live conflict. So they create this conflict with India, and then with Afghanistan, and like this is all game behind it. And Pakistan army generals, they are billionaires. When they retire, they don't live in Pakistan. Their children, and they all they they emigrate to Europe, Canada, Australia. Even they have Pakistani generals have bought islands there, and they have big properties and businesses. And so it's a big mafia basically. So they are very corrupt, and these are the people who have created this whole hatred, and have been working for it. But general public, particularly people in POJK, they have not been, I mean, successful in brainwashing our people. Our people still are secular, and they want to live together with our Hindu brothers and sisters and Sikhs and non-Muslims.
That's very good to know. I was actually going to ask you, when you say our people, would you be able to clarify who? But you just clarified it with the people who live in POJK. So thank you so much for that. So with regards to the Hindu massacre of Mirpur, which happened in 1947, and at the beginning we were saying a lot of people have not heard of it, and I know you briefly explained why that could have been. But can you probably, think about why is it that it took so long for us to find out about the Mirpur Hindu massacre, and also and Sikh Hindu and Sikh massacre, and also why is it important to talk about this now, particularly about the Hindu persecution and the total decimation of their population in POJK? Because there isn't a lot of Hindu populations in POJK, and I hear what you say about the common people, but can you maybe talk about what all of this has done to the Hindu population, and why is it important that we talk about it?
No, you said not a lot of people. Not a single Hindu and non-Muslim lives in POJK. It's 100% Muslim population now. Not even, there are some Christians who who still live there, but they are originally from Punjab. So as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, are state subjects. None of the non-Muslim state subjects uh, live in POJK. That's one thing. It was 100%. I mean, the non-Muslim population was rooted out from POJK under the designs of Pakistan Army. And the first question which you asked is very disturbing when you realize, and when you do your own research, and you dig out the things, and you try to understand the history between the lines. Excuse me. It is very disturbing. In fact, Sheikh Abdullah Sahab and Nehruji both were involved in indirectly and directly, whatever way a researcher can conclude, in this Hindu massacre. There were delegations from, because Mirpur was part of India, because Jammu and Kashmir acceded to India on 26th of October 1947. So Jammu and Kashmir was under our foreign affairs. Jammu and Kashmir foreign affairs, defense, and communications were, these three portfolios were excuse me, handed over to India on 26th of October 1947, and Indian army landed on Srinagar airport on 27th of October 1947 under the leadership of Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah. Unfortunately, Sheikh Abdullah Sahab and Nehruji both, because of the hatred they had for Dogra government and for their own political designs and their own political affiliations and their political objectives, they I won't say, because I have studied a lot about these events, and my conclusion is that they willfully and they consciously let this massacre happen, because MLAs of Jammu and Kashmir government, they even tried their best to meet Nehruji many times, and they failed to convince him that army should be sent to Mirpur, because Mirpur was part of this, Indian administration, or Jammu and Kashmir, mainland Jammu and Kashmir administration. It was not under Pakistani control, and Mirpur was the Mirpur was the third largest, I would say, third largest commercial hub in Jammu and Kashmir after Srinagar and Jammu. So it was a very wealthy, very rich city. It was a Hindu majority city, and it was, it was very, very educated. People were very educated, and they were quite well off. And people there were very influential as well, politically and socially. And unfortunately, Sheikh Abdullah Sahab, because of his political designs, he didn't want those sort of people to be in Jammu and Kashmir, because they were a direct threat for his own political future. Because Sheikh Abdullah Sahab, when whole of India was struggling under the leadership of Indian National Congress. When they were struggling they had launched a movement against British rulers, and they wanted to throw them out. And there was um, uh, what was that, Subhash Chandra Bose army, like Azad in Indian army. And I mean, people were struggling on military front. I mean, they were trying their best to fight British establishment. And then on political fronts, Indian National Congress leadership, um, when I mean, every sensible person, every mature person, every patriotic citizen in India, they were fighting against British establishment and British rulers. Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah Saab launched a movement called Kashmir Chhod Do in Jammu and Kashmir, and he gave a slogan, Mahida Amritsar tod do, Kashmir hamara chhod do. So he just wanted to liberate Kashmir from, from Jammu and Kashmir. He wanted to divide Jammu and Kashmir state, and he wanted to liberate Kashmir from this whole, he wanted an independent Kashmir from Jammu. He wanted to separate Jammu and Kashmir for his own political designs, because he believed that if the Jammu and Kashmir remained united, then obviously he would have no center of influence and he won't be able to rule Jammu and Kashmir. So he divided Jammu and Kashmir in a way that could nurture his political ambitions. And unfortunately, Nehruji was very closely related and had political affiliations with Sheikh Abdullah Saab, and Sheikh Abdullah and Nehruji were, blood brothers as well. So Nehruji was Kashmiri too. He was Kashmiri Pandit. Sheikh Abdullah was Kashmiri Pandit. So I mean, they had that sort of relationship. Then they had a common enemy in Maharaja Hari Singh. They both hated Maharaja Hari Singh, and they wanted to overthrow Maharaja Hari Singh, and they wanted to take control of whole of Jammu and Kashmir. And it was not possible as long as intellectuals and businessmen and influential social people and those in bureaucracy and civil administration, as long as those people were there, and particularly from this Dogra belt, Dogri speaking belt of Jammu and Kashmir, as long as they were there, they were a big hurdle in the way of Sheikh Abdullah Saab's political designs and his political plan. His political plan couldn't succeed. So, unfortunately, if I invite your listeners, every single person who is listening to this podcast, I invite them to do their own research. Don't listen to me, what I am saying. Please do research. Now, everything is readily available. This is information technology and social media era we are living in. The whole information about the whole world is on our fingertips. Please do research, and anybody who is research minded and who wants to find out the truth would conclude that unfortunately, for political motives, in 1947, Sheikh Abdullah Saab and Nehruji were involved in this Hindu massacre as well, because Jangar was army brigade headquarters, and Indian army was not sent to Jangar. If army had the army been sent to there, Mirpur would have been saved. Mirpur was under command of Sheikh Abdullah Saab. It was not controlled by Pakistan till 25th of November. And Pakistan had invaded Jammu and Kashmir on 22nd of October. So for whole month, they couldn't occupy Mirpur city, which was very, very prosperous city, and it was a trade hub as well. It was very wealthy city, and it was Hindu majority city. It was hub of Hindus, and even Hindus from nearby Punjab towns They had come in 1947. They had come and taken shelter in Mirpur. So I mean, how could that important that important city, which was the third largest city and a trade center and a financial hub of the state, could be ignored? The only reason was because if this was with this, if Mirpur were the Mirpur with the rest of Jammu and Kashmir, then Sheikh Abdullah's designs could not be completed. He couldn't carry out his political ambitions. It was impossible for him because of this the Kashmiri and Dogra's hatred which he created and all that. I'm drifting away from the main topic, but the thing is, it is Pakistan Army who directly did all this, but they were unfortunately facilitated by Jammu and Kashmir administration, which was controlled and ruled by Sheikh Abdullah Saab, and then Indian administration, particularly Nehruji. Nehruji was directly involved, and he ignored. He left, like whatever way you look at it, he was a prime minister. It was his duty. I mean, excuse me. It was his duty as a political leader. He was not a child. I mean, he was a political leader of very high stature. So he failed to understand the dynamics, geopolitical situation, and the interest which British rulers had, and the interest, the way Indian establishment was working, and the designs which Lord Mountbatten had, and then the way Pakistan was created, the whole game behind it, and all this. I mean, a good leader should realize and should understand. I mean, even if they are unable to do anything, they should have knowledge of it. What's happening around them. But unfortunately, Nehruji didn't realize or failed to act appropriately, accordingly, and left everything to Sheikh Abdullah. Whatever the motive behind it was, we can give him benefit of doubt, but nobody can give any benefit of doubt to Sheikh Abdullah, because every single thing was left to Sheikh Abdullah Saab. And Nehruji everywhere stated that all the military, all the decisions about army movement would be taken by Sheikh Abdullah Saab and with his consent. Not a single army movement or maneuver will be carried out without his consent and without his agreement. So Sheikh Abdullah Saab was directly involved. Basically, he wanted to divide Jammu and Kashmir for his political motives. And if you look at this ceasefire line, which was created in 1949, Ladakh province was divided. Whole of Ladakh in Baltistan and Gilgit, that was divided, and then Jammu province was divided. Kashmir was divided only administratively. Muzaffarabad district was administratively, it was part of Kashmir, but linguistically, ethnically, Muzaffarabad is part of Dogra belt, because in whole of Muzaffarabad, majority of people, about over 90 people, 90% people are Dogri speaking. So Sheikh Abdullah Saab just cleared Kashmiri speaking Kashmir Valley from Pakistani invaders, and then stopped Indian armies there, and then he divided Jammu province in a way that their power is eliminated, and they are no more a threat to Sheikh Abdullah Saab's political power. And then for this all, I mean, the outcome was elimination of a very rich and very, very a big and very influential and very intellectual center of influence of Jammu and Kashmir. I would call it a civilization. Mirpur was, honestly speaking, when we read about Mirpur, Bimber is now a district, but it has been part of Mirpur. It was it was Bimber, Kotli, all was district Mirpur. The now present day Mirpur division was whole Mirpur district in those days, back in 1947. So we are Mirpuris in those terms. And Mirpur was honestly, it was not a city, it was not a town, it was not a commercial hub. It was a whole civilization. And if you read the names of those, like the judges, the doctors, the writers, the printers, the publishers, the intellectuals, the business community, they all were mainly Hindus. Who were from Mirpur, and they were a big asset for not just for Jammu and Kashmir, but I believe they could have become a big asset for whole of India. But unfortunately, they were let to die miserably, brutally. They were killed and murdered by Pakistan army. They were let to be killed. They were allowed to be killed by Jammu and Kashmir administration, which was controlled by Sheikh Abdullah Sahab, unfortunately. And then, like Sheikh Abdullah Sahab and Nehruji, these both, like their dynasties, you may call them, or their parties, they controlled whole, like Indian politics and Jammu and Kashmir politics for very, very, very long period. So these were people, sorry?
So that explains why this never really, we are finding about it now.
Yeah, that is the reason. That is the main reason, because, like Indian National Congress, I am very, I'm a big critic of Indian National Congress. The reason is because we are suffering because of Indian National Congress today and Sheikh Abdullah Sahab. National Conference and National Congress. In 1970, I'll just give you one example. In 1972, 93,000 Pakistani army personnel were under in Indian prisons. They were prisoners of war, and United Nations had asked Pakistan to quit Jammu and Kashmir. The first part of United Nations resolutions demanded Pakistan to quit all its armed forces and citizens from Jammu and Kashmir. So that was the time Indira Gandhi ji could have very easily asked Pakistan, these are United Nations resolutions, and even, convinced the rest of the international community, United Nations, that these are your resolutions, these are not Indian resolutions. United Nations has asked Pakistan to pull out army and citizens from Jammu and Kashmir. So I'm sorry, these 93,000 people would stay here, our guess, as long as Pakistan doesn't adhere to these UN resolutions. And if UN is unable to implement their, or unable to force Pakistan to follow their resolutions, then UN cannot ask us to release these prisoners. So, I mean, it was a big leverage in Indian hands, but unfortunately, again, because of this Congress, plan, because Congress has always been friendly with Pakistan, and they have always. Well, I don't want to be, a party in because we are constitutionally, we are citizens under enemies' occupation. So I don't want to be, that blunt, but unfortunately, Indian political leadership has always accommodated Pakistan, has promoted their interests, and they have played in the hands of Western forces. And then in Jammu and Kashmir, their puppets were in form of National Conference, and these both forces, Indian National Congress and National Conference. Up till, you know, like early 2000, these even first decade of this millennium, you know, even after until 2010, these people have been at the helm of affairs in Jammu and Kashmir and in India. So they didn't let this information spill out from those archives. So that is the main reason. And now this government, this present Indian government, which is a nationalist government, and they have different policies. So they have, like they have realized that the mistakes which were committed by Indian governments in the past should be undone. So they have changed their policy. And obviously now Sheikh Abdullah family doesn't have that much hold on Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir as well. So this is why, you know, since 2010, these things have come out now.
Started to
That's
come
the
out.
reason.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for explaining all of that. I can really hear your disappointment, in the Indian government at the time, whether it was Nehru or it was Indira Gandhi. I can totally see that. And thank you for explaining it so well. Moving on. You said this before as well, and so we know that rape and abduction were used as weapons of war around that time in Mirpur and elsewhere in Jammu and Kashmir by the Pakistani army. And we still see a small percentage of Hindus that remain in Pakistan, under difficult circumstances, and they still go through torture and discrimination every day, and Hindu girls get abducted, kidnapped, or forced to convert and marry. If not, they will be killed. Do you have any comments on this sort of behavior, by the Pakistani state? Because it started in, like you said, with that massacre and probably even before, but it's been going on and it's still going on. And what would you like to say, or what would be your comment on that?
This is basically Pakistani establishment, and Pakistani establishment is controlled and led by Pakistan Army, and it's three M's: Mullah, military, and media alliance, basically. Or it's, like you can say, Pakistan Army leads and mullahs and military. So Pakistani military leads and mullah and media, they just follow or they side with Pakistan Army. So these three evils basically have created a society which is full of hatred, full of extremism, full of fundamentalism, and full of, like nonsense ideology. And this Pakistan, nowadays, Pakistan is, even general public is suffering as well. But unfortunately, common Pakistani people are, so full of hatred against non-Muslims. Because this is what, these people now, those people who were there in 1947, I think almost all of them have passed away. So it is a new Pakistani public which was born in Pakistan, which is brought up in Pakistan, which is educated in Pakistan, and under particular designs and under particular syllabus and curriculum. So religious hatred is taught to them, and they have been made to believe that Muslims are there to rule, and Muslims, they can't be ruled by anybody else, and Muslims have only got the right to right to lead and right to rule, and rest of the all other religions, people from all other religions have to be their subordinates, and they have to do whatever Muslims tell them to do, and Muslims will go to Jannah, and rest of the whole, anybody else from any other religion, they will go to the hell. And like any Muslim who dies serving these objectives, they will be given 72 hoods, 72 beautiful ladies in life hereafter, and like blah 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 bullshit. I even can't talk about all this. So this is basically Pakistani philosophy. This is basically 3M's coalition in Pakistani establishment, military, mullah, and media. So they have created a Pakistan which is international hub of terrorism, which is a nursery for hatred, for hatred and extremism and militancy and jihad and all that. And these, unfortunately, like anybody who knows about the principles of Islam and teachings teachings of Quran and life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace be upon him, and his companions' lives, this is against Islam even. I just quote one verse here, chapter 2, verse 62 of Quran. It says, anybody, there are 3 conditions: who believes in Allah, and who believes in the day of judgment, and who does good deeds will be rewarded by Allah. You call it Krishna, you call it Ishwar. Different religions have different names for Allah. Muslims call Allah. We know that power as Allah, but you can call whatever other religions consider that supreme power. Excuse me. So even Quran says very clearly, it is full verse, not a part of verse. There is no like background or no other like, and nothing else attached with this verse. This is a complete verse which states that anybody can go to the heaven. But if you talk to a general Muslim, ordinary Muslim, he would say no, nobody other than Muslim can go to heaven. So I mean, this is what Pakistan, and then unfortunately Saudi coalition, and this has been in past, those all fundamentalist and jihadi elements of Islamic world. They have been.
Oh, sorry. So are you saying that it's because of that sort of that coalition between the 3Ms, and that drives, why do they go after like Hindu girls or like non-Muslim girls and force them for conversion, if not like even if it means raping them or abducting them? So how is that connected?
Because mullahs, in every single Pakistani mullah, they preach on every Friday, and then there are 30 days of Ramadan, continues for 30 days during Ramadan. That is one full month. Then every week on Friday, they have got the whole day. And then there are different organizations, religious organizations, who have other days, and there are other religious festivals. And so almost half of the period in a given year is I mean, people are one way or the other, they are preached by these mullahs, and these mullahs believe, and they educate people that only Muslims can go to the heaven, and obviously a Muslim should be living to earn heaven. And then they say that anybody who who converts any person from another religion to Muslim, whatever way he uses, whatever means he uses, whatever means are available to him, if an ordinary Muslim converts a non-Muslim to Muslim, so his all sins will be forgiven, and he will be the highest reward would be given to him by Allah, and he will have the highest exalted place in Jannah, and blah blah blah. So that is the only reason, general public, they believe that any non-Muslim they come across or they come into contact with, they try to convert them. And these little minor girls, obviously, they are the most soft, prey for these people. And they believe that, I mean, because they have they have been born in Pakistan, they have been brought up in Pakistan, they have been educated in Pakistan, they live in Pakistani society, so they have 100% influence of Pakistani culture, society, philosophy, Pakistani uh, state thought, and whatever, whatever way you interpret it, the framework in which Pakistani society lives. So everybody there believes that if they convert a non-Muslim to a Muslim, then their every even future sins will be forgiven, and they will straightway go to Jannah. So it is, it is a race for Jannah basically in Pakistani society, which makes them commit all these
atrocities.
All these atrocities and all these inhuman, I would say, all these inhuman acts. And if we, that's why I say, if we read lives of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his companions, and like real teachings of Islam, if we try to learn them, there is no such concept, because lakum lakum deenukum waliya deen, this is Quranic verse. Everybody has their own religion. You have your own religion, I have my own religion. And then there is a Quranic verse like la ikraha fi deen. There is no compulsion in religion. Nobody can force anybody else to change their religion. And Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if we read about Sulh Hudaybiyah, study Sulh Hudaybiyah, and then the first state which he created in Medina, it was a complete secular state which Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam created in Medina. But unfortunately, this Pakistani Islam, this is not Islam. This is Pakistani Islam.
They've
Basically,
created their own version
they
of
have
it,
created their own Islam, which is full of hatred, which is full of militancy, which is full of extremism, which is full of killings, whatever inhuman element you can put into it. It contains that. Unfortunately,
and it comes from the state as well. Like
it is sponsored by the state. What is state? As I have told you, you see, Nawaz Sharif has been portrayed as Indian agent. Why? Because he wanted friendship with India. Anybody, any political leader, what do they call Imran Khan nowadays? He's Indian agent as well. So any Fatima Jannah, who was Muhammad Ali Jinnah's sister, that family who was some way or the other, instrumental in creating Pakistan. They are known as founders of Pakistan. She was labeled as Indian agent by Ayub Khan, General Ayub Khan. So anybody who doesn't like military policies, or tries to change military status, or tries to send them back to their garrison, and tries to contain them, contain their powers, that person is called and known as Indian agent, or agents of Jews and Western forces and blah blah blah. So the most recent example is Imran Khan, former prime minister, and Nawaz Sharif, former prime. Benazir Bhutto, even she was labeled as agent. So I mean, it's only Pakistan military and only army as an institution is considered as like real Pakistanis who stand up for Pakistan, who believe in Pakistani ideology, who promote Pakistani ideology, who can defend Pakistan, who can make Pakistan stronger. Whereas the fact is that whatever in 1970, what happened in 1971, the world forgets. What the people, Pakistani people, they are so uneducated, and they are, brought up under the umbrella of this Pakistan studies, that they don't even realize that Pakistan army has not won even single inch of land which was claimed by Pakistan in 1947 to be part of Pakistan, are those states which even their rulers tried to accede to Pakistan. Pakistan army couldn't secure those states, not even a single inch. And they have lost the whole country, half of the country, which is Bangladesh now. And Bangladesh, look, Bangladesh, where does Bangladesh stand today? Their economic position and their, all parameters, their social and economic and their civil development and everything, their education system, like where have they gone? They have surpassed Pakistan in every single sphere of life. But still Pakistanis believe that no, this army is doing, is their
This is the only way to
savior
do it.
and guardian, and this is Pakistan philosophy. And so as long as this Pakistan army is there, they are ruling Pakistan. They are not sent back to their barracks. There would never be any peace in South Asia, and we all will keep on suffering, unfortunately. That is a fact.
Okay, thank you, Sajjad ji. So since you are an activist from POJK, can you confirm that no Hindu or Sikh families remain there, and those whose homeland it is, and what has been the human right, situation there, and what the people who originally are from there, what is their human rights situation?
In POJK.
In POJK, yeah. Like, I remember you saying that there was actually no non-Muslims there anymore and just some Christians. So I just wanted you to specifically confirm that there are actually no Hindus or Sikhs there. And what is the situation of people, those people who were from there? What are their human rights situation now?
Human rights situations of Hindus and Muslims you are asking about?
Hindus and Sikhs who had to fled and who were killed. And...
Hindus and Sikhs. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There is not a single Hindu or Sikh in Jammu, in POJK, Pakistani-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Not a single. Population of POJK is about 4.5 million, and Gilgit-Baltistan is about 2 million, so about 6.5 million. Out of those 6.5 million people, there is not even just single Hindu or Sikh in these areas. So they were uprooted, they were killed, they were murdered, and their women were abducted, either forcibly converted, or they were sold to to Pakistani, markets, as slaves and maids. So the way these people were uprooted, in fact these are the people who for thousands of years they were sons of soil. Hindus, even we people, we are Indians, and our forefathers used to be Hindus. About 500 years ago we converted to Islam, we embraced Islam, but even after that, because we have similar culture and family traditions and values and ethics and all that, so we all lived quite happily, and we have same genes and all that. There are very few people who have come into subcontinent from Central Asia and Arab countries, Middle East. Majority of the Muslims of even Pakistan, people living in Pakistan, and particularly in Jammu and Kashmir, about, I would say, well over 95% of Muslims are offshoot of Hindus. So unfortunately, only these people were allowed to live, and the Hindus who didn't. There are a few instances when they were given a choice. When before killing them, they were given a choice that they should embrace Islam, they should convert to Islam, or they will be killed. That very, very few instances. Otherwise, they were very brutally and inhumanly, they were killed, they were tortured, their children were, in front of them, their children were killed, their women were raped in front of them, and then they were abducted. All young women, only from Mirpur city, excuse me, from Mirpur city, over 5,000 young women were abducted, and there is no clue where they have gone. They went missing, and either they were sold or they were, like taken away, or what happened to them. So just one city, Mirpur. So, and and there was not even a single village or single town in whole POJK where Hindus and Sikhs were not living, because all businesses were normally controlled by Hindus, and then educated, teachers and lawyers and other government servants, they were mostly Hindus. So Hindus used to live in every, particularly businesses were, main, even small shops, town and village shops, and then this they were involved in this financial transactions. They used to lend money to people in need, and this was their business back in those days. So there was not even a single village, even where the whole village is Muslim population, there would be at least one or two shop owners or businessmen who were Hindus. So it was not just Mirpur. Mirpur is just one city. Hindus and Sikhs, they lived everywhere. They had their religious places, they had their gurdwaras, they had their mandars, and but everything was demolished, destroyed in 1947. Their lands were captured, and their women were taken away, their children were killed, and mostly the young people, like people between age of 15 and 60, they were murdered in 1947 and 1948. And the sole objective was to inflame, to 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 light up and to convince people that Muslims and Hindus can't live together, and to create permanent hatred and enmity among them, which, as I have previously explained, was a British design. So what human rights? Even today, this history we talk about Hindus persecution or Hindus massacre was in 1947. When even, like in the world, there were no, like, there wasn't any established concept of human human rights and fundamental freedoms and charter of, like human rights and conventions and all those things. In 1947, these things didn't exist. Even today, in 2023, we don't have any fundamental freedom or any basic human right in POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. No economic right, no religious right, no political right, nothing at all. No freedom of speech, no freedom of peaceful assembly, no freedom of expression, nothing at all. And we are all Muslims. And our forefathers were used by this Pakistan army. Our forefathers were instrumental in carrying out all these atrocities. Even, we being their children don't have any right. So you can imagine what sort of rights and what sort of freedoms or what sort of treatment Hindus and Sikhs and non-Muslims faced or had, in those days, and what sort of persecution they went through. You can imagine, when a person like me or any Muslim, probably what is happening in POJK these days. Cities have been shut down. People are on roads. They are educating. They are agitating against. Protesting against Pakistan. There is a sort of civil disobedience movement going on, which is called Jammu Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee. So even we people not have any basic right today. So what rights would have these Hindus and Sikhs back in 1947? Definitely nothing at all.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it is really there's quite a lot there, and it's kind of I can't really begin to I can't even begin to imagine what being particularly being an activist, and all of this truth and what that must have been like since 1947. I just wanted to ask you, what is your takeaway? And when I say takeaway, what I mean is like, what could have been done in 1947 to to protect the minorities? I mean, I remember you saying they were not the minorities at the time, but like when you think about the non-Muslim population in POJK after the invasion, what could have been done to protect the Hindus and Sikhs and other non-Muslim? And also, even in today's world, in 2023, what should an ethical community do to protect and value vulnerable minorities?
Back in 1947, it was very, very difficult to protect. It was, and let me clarify, let me tell you, it was not only Hindus and Muslims. I mean, we are talking about Mirpur, and obviously it was Hindu massacre and Hindus persecution. But there were towns and villages where there were Muslims persecution and Muslim massacre as well. And not, if we go out from Jammu and Kashmir, then in subcontinent, probably the largest migration took place in 1947, human migration, over probably over 4 million people, or I don't exactly remember, 40 million I was reading somewhere. Probably over 40 million people migrated in 1947. Muslims from India to so-called Pakistan, and then Hindus and Sikhs and non-Muslims from Pakistan to India. So, it was very difficult in those days, back in 1947, to protect these suffering masses, because it was basically designed, it was basically carried out by rulers, by British establishment. And they had all intelligence, they had media, they had everything in their control. And because when they wanted to leave India the way they wanted India to be in future, this part of the world. They wanted them to be poor. They wanted them to be like dependent on Western powers. They wanted to be like uneducated, uncivilized, and they had their own like 100 years, 200 years plan which they had made. So it was not possible to stop all this, but it could be at certain places and in certain areas it could be reduced. It could be reduced up to a large extent. And I think only, if you think of stopping it, or if you think of, how could we be better off back in 1947, the only thing which comes to my mind, or which I understand, was a possibility was, Gandhiism. Gandhi's philosophy, his teachings, his education, and probably you remember and you know it. Gandhi didn't want India to be divided. He resisted. He protested, and he was the man who resisted. Because he knew that what would happen if we go for this division. He was a man of vision. He if we read about Gandhi, we would come to know how great personality he was, how great leader he was, how visionary person he was. So his thoughts and his educations and his teachings and his way could have saved us. But unfortunately, Indian National Congress didn't follow, didn't agree to Gandhi's plans. And if Indian National Congress would have agreed with Muslim League and stopped Muslim League, but obviously Muslim League was playing. What was Muslim League? Let me tell you another thing here, which is very interesting. They say Muslim League created Pakistan, and it was, they fought for the independence of Pakistan. But Pakistan was created. Pakistan didn't exist, which was, which was made independent, or the independence was acquired, or achieved in 1947. It was created basically, and those people who created Pakistan, none of them even for a single day went into a prison. They were political leaders. Muhammad Ali Jinnah never went to, like, he was not arrested for a single day. What does that mean? That means they were British establishment puppets. They played in their hands. They did whatever British establishment wanted them to do. So all Muslim League leadership, if you look at them, none of them was, they all were Pakistani, this Pakistani leadership, they all was British puppets, basically. So it was again very difficult, because Muslim League was, and media was, because in obviously, and intelligence and everything, it was controlled by British establishment, and British establishment wanted to divide India for their own interests. So even Gandhi could have not, and as he failed to keep India united, but that's what he wanted, and that was the only way. And then in certain areas, like if our political leadership could have better vision and understanding of the situation, then if not millions, at least hundreds of thousands of people could have been saved from this persecution and these miseries and these atrocities. But unfortunately, our political leadership in subcontinent was very weak. So I mean, it was very difficult, but yeah, had Nehruji and Indian National Congress leadership, and particularly in context of Jammu and Kashmir, had Sheikh Abdullah Saab been not siding with British establishment, then much of it could have been could have been averted.
Thank you so much, Sajjad Ji. I mean, I just have one last question. You stressed a lot on the importance of doing your own research, for the audiences. So if our audience, if they want to get more information about, what happened in Mirpur and, the partition in Jammu and Kashmir particularly, and the atrocities that happened to the non-Muslims, and even today, what's happening in POJK, where could they find more information about, or is there any specific books that you would recommend that they read?
Yeah, if you want to, for Mirpur particularly, there is a book, as I have mentioned, Bal K. Gupta, his book, and then there is another book, Bal K. Gupta's book was probably written in English. I have only got its Urdu translation. I don't know what was his name. This book's. Yeah, the book is Forgotten Atrocities, Memories of a Survivor of the 1947 by Bal K. Gupta.
Okay.
And then there is another book by Krishna Mehta, who was wife of Muzaffarabad Deputy Commissioner. She has written what she witnessed in Muzaffarabad in 1947. It's her book. And then we are trying to compile some. There are some articles by Samina Raja. Those, most of them are in Urdu because they are written for the people back in POJK, and POJK people are not that much educated. They just they read and write Urdu language. So Samina Raja has written, but Samina Raja has written many articles about the history of Jammu and Kashmir and what happened, political history of Jammu and Kashmir, and geopolitics of the region. So there's Samina Raja's articles, and then we are trying to compile some literature because of our lack of resources and time and constraints and other things. It will take some time, but in future, definitely more material would be available.
Well,
definitely.
thank you so much, Sajjad Ji, for joining us. It was really important to hear from you amongst our other guests, because we really needed to shine a light on what happened, and particularly because this is the Hindu persecution awareness month. We wanted to shine a light on that from different angles, and it was really important that you join us today. And I really want to, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of Insight UK, I really want to thank you and for your patience, for bearing with me and sharing your experience and your understanding of what happened in Mirpur and the massacre and pretty much the history of POJK. Thank you so much. I just want to wish you all the best and success in your future endeavors, and I hope that you continue to fight bravely as you have done in the past.
Thank you very much. The last thing I would like to do again here, I've done it many times. Being a child of our forefathers, and being a political activist and human rights defender, I once again I apologize for the sins which were committed, for the atrocities which were committed in 1947 by our people, by some of our forefathers maybe as well, and by these, puppets of Pakistani establishment back in 1947. But believe us, we have learned a lesson the hard way, and I think this apology, whenever and wherever we meet, we have no condition, and unconditionally we submit this apology to our Hindu brothers and sisters who were amongst us, our part, our body and soul, and unfortunately they were taken away from us. And let's work together to make sure that this never happens again. Never ever. That's the final thing I would like to say.
Thank you so much, Sajjad Ji. I mean, I'm sure that speaks to a lot of people. Yeah, namaste.